Hi, welcome to the Our Fetter YouTube channel. Today, it's my 1984 turbo diesel VW Rabbit, except it's broken. So, I took it to the racetrack a couple weeks ago now, been waiting on parts, and my turbo blew up. This is my turbine, this is the turbo in my car, and yeah, this happened while I was on a wide open throttle, well, diesel equivalent wide open throttle pull. And so, wouldn't you know it, the compressor wheel here decided that it wanted to take a trip right into my compressor housing, which it did at like 250,000 RPM. And it messed it up pretty good. Let's see if I can get this in focus here. Yeah, check that out. It's not looking too hot. Alright, so my compressor wheel basically smashed itself into the compressor housing, sending bits of shrapnel that fell off the compressor wheel into the engine of the car. Now, there is a big front mount intercooler right here, which I'm going to take off and clean, and I imagine right about here is going to be most of this. However, I already pulled off this section of tubing. This is my intake manifold, and the reason I think I need to tear down my engine is because there is a beautiful shiny pocket of little metal filings that made it, all the way to here. The two regions I'm concerned about these little particles getting into are my valve seats, one, so head's coming off for sure, and I'm going to clean around all my valve seats, clean all my intake ports, make sure there's no metal filings, and then around my piston rings, where these little bits love to go is they love to lodge between the edge of the piston and the wall and kind of get between different piston rings. Not good. So we're going to drop the oil pan and take all the pistons out today as well. For people that follow this build closely, I'm looking at probably doing kind of 3 stages of repair and improvement here. So we're doing stage 1 today, which is tear down and cleaning and reassembly. And I have these beautiful things, some ARP 2000. So what's in there right now is our ARP head studs, but they are not ARP 2000, which means they could only be torqued to like 90 foot-pounds, and I'm pretty sure I over-torqued them to like 120 because I read the wrong instructions. At any rate, I don't think they're very good at this point if they've been over-torqued like that. Brand new ones, and these can be torqued to 125 foot-pounds a piece, which is freaking sweet. So we're going to do fresh head gasket, fresh head studs, and clean everything and put it back together. So that's stage 1. Stage 2 is going to be fuel pump swap. We've been screwing around with this naturally aspirated pump. This is off a 81 naturally aspirated 1.6. And I'm going to go ahead and put the turbo pump back on at this point. I think it's been really interesting to experiment with this, but I'm also tired of screwing around with kind of a mid-grade pump when I have a better one. And when I go and put in that turbo pump, I'm going to do the 10mm plunger as well as the high lift TDI or MTDI cam plate is going to give me shorter injection duration and more fuel. Hopefully you'll see those EGTs come down a bit. And then stage 3 is going to be addressing turbo life. Part of that, I think, was the quality of the turbo, and that's why it failed. Part of that was I don't think it was getting enough oil, which isn't why it failed, but would eventually make it fail. Part of it was the fact that the vanes were too closed and my VNT mechanism wasn't working. So we're going to get the VNT mechanism working and hopefully install an exhaust manifold pressure gauge, and we're going to do some oil rerouting. Currently I'm running the TD, the 1.6 TD oil pan fitting, that kind of like little gooseneck that comes off of it. Junk, puts it in a bad place. I'm gonna cut that off and weld on just a hose barb, and then hopefully run my oil drain straight down under the axle and then to my oil pan. So, those are 3 stages. We are only doing 1 today. We're gonna take this apart and clean it and put it most of the way back together, probably. But I haven't done the pump mods yet, so it's not going that much back together. Probably just put the head on and call it a day. Off we go. you can see a little bit of, it's not even scoring really. I mean, it kind of is, but all that vertical hatching there is just the marks of the little aluminum pieces getting rubbed. So there's probably some down there between the piston and the first ring. But I mean, otherwise, looking real good. But honestly, this is a motor that's seen well over 1600 degree EGTs multiple times, and it looks fine. So there's an interesting data point for everybody. All right, and here we have the head. It's looking just fine, honestly. After a bit of cleaning, still have the same cracks between the valves. That's that I know. And it doesn't really look like they've gotten much bigger, so that's fine. And they're not in the valve seats yet, which means they're definitely fine. I am seeing the beginning of cracks on all of the pre-chambers though. So if anyone else has had this phenomenon before, maybe let me know what you thought. To me, they look really small, and so far, probably not worth doing anything about. Found a good bit of compressor wheel, right? See that? That is compressor wheel that got smashed under a valve. Sweet. Just cleaned and reassembled this one. I'm gonna do the exact same thing to these three, but all I did was take the rings off and then give them a good spray down and give the piston a good spray down and wipe everything and cleaned out these grooves here at the top and reassembled it. That's it. And I checked all my rods and those feel good. So everything's doing fine besides the fact that the turbo shat itself, but what are you gonna do? Right there, this little guy, that's a piece of compressor wheel as well, so I'm glad I'm doing this. Pistons are back in, block is ready to go, fresh head gasket is ready to go, fresh ARP 2000 head studs are ready to go. Little bit of rubbing alcohol, isopropyl, for a final once over, remove any dusties or things we don't want. Now compared to some people, I do feel like my cleaning job here was like strictly mediocre, but a lot of this stuff on here isn't going anywhere. So go ahead and put these in first. They have a little Allen key. I'm probably gonna torque them very lightly. It does say hand tight, for what that's worth. But at any rate, I'm gonna put all these in, put the head gasket on, make sure the head gasket doesn't move too much before I put the head back on, And then slam the head on this Johnny. Here we go. So we're ready to put a head on, except one small issue I've come across several times. And it's not as much of a problem with these paper gaskets because they're a bit tighter, but it's pretty hard to get this thing centered because the car is up on jacks right now and the engine is tilted backwards anyways. So you'll see if I try to push it up, you can imagine setting a head on it and like it moves. And then when you crush this, it gets in the way of the piston. So I think this time, in order to avoid such shenanigans, I'm gonna attempt to put some tape along the front or sides or somewhere, probably the sides, to hold it in place while we're getting the head on it. Took a little fiddling, but definitely sides I think is best, and it has some side to side, which is okay. Maybe even you could do these two sides too if you're really gonna tweak super hard, but I think this is gonna be enough to get us there. Alright, gingerly now. Just like so. Hopefully we got the gasket where it's supposed to be. If we didn't, we'll find out pretty soon, and the pistons will hit no matter what you do. Meaning that if the gasket crushed at a weird angle, one of the pistons would come up and run into it, and then you'll initially think it's a valve, but it's not a valve, it's just your head gasket on wrong. We got the bolt sequence. ARP calls for 3 steps, equal steps to, in this case, 125 foot-pounds. So that means 41 foot-pounds the first time, approximately 82 foot-pounds the second time, and then 125. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to 41 and go ahead and start. Now, what I recently learned was the importance of equal steps. I always thought you'd like split something, or I didn't really understand why, I just did it. But the importance of 3 even steps is so that your head gasket actually like smooshes nicely, which the technical term for that is flows, because we're putting it under so much compression. And I think I've like done the math once, and like for this car with this number of studs, you'd be putting like 1,000 pounds of force on the head gasket from doing this. Wow, I've already practically screwed it up. At any rate, so you do it in 3 even steps so your head gasket doesn't smush the wrong way or unevenly, and then again probably ultimately just run into your pistons. I was able to look up, spin the piston fully through its travel until I think one of these two, lightly touched a valve. So the head gasket's good. I'm going to go ahead and crank it to its final torque spec, which is 125 foot-pounds, which is pretty freaking awesome. There's not many products I actually give a shit about, but ARP head studs seemingly are worth their weight in gold. Okay, head is on. I just rechecked that the bottom end spins nicely, and it sure does. The camshaft here is set to TDC. Bottom is close to TDC. Pump, it has to go in, but I'm going to do the mods first. So we're going to be waiting on that for a minute. But the valve cover, the oil pan especially still needs resealed. It's not looking I like had to use RTV and this thing's all gnarly. Anyways, I'm gonna grind out some like oil cavity closing work, and then we'll be pretty close to having a working engine again, which is freaking sweet. So, we are complete on stage 1. I took the pistons out, I took all the rings off, I cleaned everything, I cleaned the cylinder walls, I inspected everything. Pistons look kinda mid, but also fine. So I put them back in, rods look great, crank looks great, put it all back together. Pre-cups look a little cracked, but we're gonna run it, because why not? The head's back on, it's gonna work. Thank you for watching stage 1 of this engine quickie rebuild / turbo failure rebuild. Stage 2 and 3 to come. Appreciate ya.